Today we're at Gettysburg National Battlefield Park, and honestly, this is one of the things I've been looking forward to the most for our trip. After reading so many books in the Civil War and so many biographies of the generals and the soldiers who fought during that war, and seeing a couple of movies on this battle, this is the thing that I've really been looking forward to. And we're here early in the morning to take the first tour of the battlefield. Our future son-in-law, Jackson, is joining us, and it promises to be a really fantastic day. Standing about halfway up Culp's Hill, which was the extreme right flank of the Union Army. And throughout the day of the July 2nd, the second day of battle, this long line here that you see, this kind of high grass where the breastworks of the entrenchments of the Union lines, it spread all the way through this hill on this slope. And 3 times the Confederates would assault up this slope of Culp's Hill, but because they had a 4-foot entrenchment dug with rocks on top of that and earth and logs, the Union forces were able to hold this position. So imagine you're a Confederate soldier. You've just come across Rock Creek. It's about waist deep. It's in front of me over here. You're soaking wet, and now you have to take Culp's Hill, this hill directly behind me, and it stretches from my right all the way around the hill up there. And the slope gets steeper the further around you go on the hill. And so they had to assault this. And not only that, but it was in the evening time. So now it's getting dark, and most of the attacks came during the black of night. And so you're assaulting up this hill. This rock behind me, called Forbes Rock, was a favorite place for Confederate soldiers to take refuge. So at the end of the day, we're sitting looking over the primary battlefield on the third day of Gettysburg. This is the field across which Pickett's charge was made. And we're here at sunset. And so we just spent the whole day here, and it's still pretty sobering to come out here and think of what happened right in front of us, right in front of this stone wall. So many thousands of Confederate soldiers who died charging up this hill for a good reason, but it just seems sometimes a waste when they could have avoided exactly what happened. The start of day 2, and we came back to Cemetery Ridge because this is where some of the most intense and bloody fighting of the battle took place. You can see across this open space behind me, there's a tree line over here. And it is 1 mile away. In between this tree line, which is Seminary Ridge, and where I'm standing, which is Cemetery Ridge, is 1 mile of unbroken open space. And it was across that the Confederates charged the Union positions here. In this stand of trees behind me, the stand or copse of trees as it's known, was the Confederate objective. They were trying to take this ridge in order to push the Unions back beyond their position so they could capture the Baltimore Pike Road, which was the primary supply line for the Union troops. So in the heat of July, and it's hardly any breeze, the Confederate soldiers came across this open space under a heavy artillery fire from on top of this ridge. And as they approached and got closer, the closer they got to the Union positions here, the Union artillery then opened up with canister fire at almost point-blank range. There was some hand-to-hand combat as they came over the positions. It went back and forth for a while, and they got almost to those copse of trees right there before they were finally repulsed back. So we spent last night just kind of processing what went on here and the type of fighting that happened. And this was the bloodiest battle in American history on American soil. Some other battle of the Civil War had as many casualties as this one. We're just to the northwest of Gettysburg on McPherson's Ridge, and this is where the battle started. So early on July 1st, there was a set of Union cavalry up here under John Buford, and they saw the Confederates coming from the north and west across the creek and up through these hills. And so his cavalry of about 2,700 men fought a delaying action on more than 7,000 Confederate troops that were coming up this direction. And Buford knew he had to delay them in order to keep the town safe because it was a very strategic point. And he was waiting on General John Reynolds to come up with his some 10,000 Union troops to support him. And right over there in the woods you're looking at, those are now called Reynolds Woods, because as Reynolds finally took the field, he ordered his men into line right in front of these woods and urged them to drive the Confederates out. And no sooner had he given his command than he was shot in the neck and died, falling from his horse, dead before he hit the ground. And the cool thing we learned about him is that when he came onto this battlefield, he was secretly engaged to a woman named Catherine, and on his little finger, as he went into battle, he wore a ring that was inscribed, "Dear Kate." Fortunately, they would never get married, and she later joined a convent and became a nun.
They reach over, they find a cartridge box, reach in the cartridge box, pull out the cartridge.
Tear cartridge.
You're gonna use their teeth to tear this. You see movies with black smears.
Cartridge.
Yeah. They're gonna pour the powder, they're gonna squeeze the bullet, and they're gonna stuff the paper in the barrel of the gun.
Draw rammer.
Pull the ramrod out, place it in the mouth of the weapon.
Charge cartridge.
They'll push all that down and pack it into the breech of the weapon. This is an important step.
Return rammer.
If you don't return the rammer, you're firing one shot and you're spear fishing. You've got to have that ramrod to make the gun work. Now, if you notice, they put it down with their pinky finger, because if you use the whole hand, there's a spark down there. That spark looks like the powder, you lose a hand. That way, if it goes off prematurely, you just lose a pinky, and those are expendable. Spacing is critical. Front and back and left to right.
Ready.
You're going to do a company fire, so if you've got tender small ears, just be prepared.
Aim. Fire. Move.
Behind me is the North Carolina Memorial, and the sculptor who did this also sculpted the 4 faces on Mount Rushmore. And for this sculpture, he used 4 Confederate War veterans as the models for the faces. And this is facing, if I spin around here, this is the field that the Confederates had to cross. And right up here on the hill is the copse of trees, which was their objective. So the objective Lee gave them. So you can see from their position what a daunting task this would be. And in fact, General Longstreet did not believe the Union position could be taken, but Lee ordered the attack anyway. So I'm walking up the path that the Confederates took on their way to assault the Union positions, and remember, this is July 3rd and it's hot and it's humid and these guys are tired and underfed, and they just crossed 3/4 of a mile or more of open terrain under artillery fire. And this is what they saw as they walked up this slope under fire, losing comrades left and right, assaulting the Union position at the angle. There are two stone walls that meet at a point, one running this way and one running 90 degrees this way. It was behind this brick wall, this rock wall, General Armstead's troops were stationed with their cannon and their infantry up against the wall. And as the Confederates came up to this wall, they met just a hail of musket fire and canister shot from the cannon. And the demonstration we saw earlier today from the North Carolina troops, one of the troops who was in that battle said that as they approached this wall, the North Carolinians would lean in to the canister shot like they were into a driving rain. And he said the cannon would fire and there would be nothing left in front of them but smoke and shoes. But eventually Armstead's troops made it up and over this wall here at the angle. A lot of hand-to-hand and close combat happened there. Eventually the Union reinforcements came and overwhelmed them and pushed them back over the wall, and they retreated back to their positions on Seminary Ridge. This copse of trees was the objective Lee gave to General Longstreet's 2nd Corps. They were to achieve this objective. They could seize this area, get to this point, and break the Union lines. They could win the battle. They actually made it, this copse of trees. In fact, this is called the high water mark of the attack. They got this far before being overwhelmed by Union reinforcements, only to fade back across the field. And this is as close as the Confederate Army would ever come to winning the war. So this hill directly behind me here is Little Round Top, and just next to it is Big Round Top. Now, Big Round Top wasn't a good defensive or even a military position because it was covered in trees. But Little Round Top at the time was fairly bald on top, so it made it an ideal location to defend or to launch an attack or maybe put some artillery on. This was the extreme left flank of the Union Army that then extended this way up on Cemetery Ridge. And this was a hill that saw such bloody fighting down in an area called Devil's Den toward the bottom. So directly west of Cemetery Ridge, the Union position is Seminary Ridge. That monument there is a monument to the Army of Northern Virginia. Right on top of that sits a statue of General Lee. And as you come back across the field, charged by the Confederate troops, up on the hill, the Union position, facing General Lee, there it is. It's the statue of General Meade, the commanding general of the Army of the Potomac, which was his opponent. The Battle of Gettysburg was the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of July, 1862. And Lincoln came here to dedicate the cemetery in November of that year, but they'd already started moving the Union soldiers' bodies from the battlefield where they were hastily buried to this cemetery that was set apart for that purpose. So only Union soldiers are buried here in the cemetery. And it wasn't until the next April, some 9 months later, that they finished moving all the bodies from the battlefield into this place. On November 19th, to dedicate the ceremony, Abraham Lincoln stood on a platform just behind me in the Evergreen Cemetery, which was already here. That was the original cemetery that gave this hill its name of Cemetery Hill. He stood on the platform back there and delivered the Gettysburg Address.